The crystal chandelier glittered above the marble lobby, casting fragments of light across the floor. When Emily Carter's heart nearly stopped. As a hotel interpreter at the prestigious Al Marwan Tower, she had overheard countless private conversations, but never one that sounded like a death sentence. She had been on her way to deliver translated documents for a corporate guest when she caught the low, urgent tones of two men in maintenance uniforms. They spoke rapidly in Arabic, unaware that Emily understood every word. "The fire starts in 10 minutes, the taller one said, glancing at his watch. "The alarms on his floor are already disabled." His partner asked about the sprinklers. "Cut off," came the reply. "He'll be trapped in his suite, no way out." Emily's blood ran cold. Everyone in the hotel knew that Daniel Rahman, the billionaire property developer currently storming through the lobby after a failed business deal, always stayed in the same penthouse on the 42nd floor. The men mentioned their employer, someone with a personal grudge, who had paid them well for this job. She could have walked away, pretended she heard nothing, and read about it later in the news. But the thought of smoke filling that penthouse, of someone dying because she stayed silent, ignited something inside her. Memories of her family fleeing war-torn Syria flashed in her mind, memories of strangers risking their lives to help them escape. Emily made her choice. Clutching the documents to her chest, she sprinted toward the private elevator Daniel had just entered, knowing that every second counted, and that stepping between those closing doors might change her life forever. The golden doors of the private elevator were almost closed when Emily Carter threw herself between them, her chest heaving, and her hands gripping the frame as if her life, and someone else's, depended on it. Daniel Rahman, the billionaire property developer whose name was constantly in the headlines, stood inside with his finger hovering over the button for the 42nd floor. His sharp, dark eyes narrowed as he took in her flushed face and hotel interpreta badge. "I don't have time for surveys or room upgrades," he said in crisp English, his tone clipped with impatience. "Whatever you're selling, I'm not interested." The elevator began to rise, its hum echoing in the tight space. Emily knew she had seconds before they reached the penthouse. She took a deep breath and switched to flawless Arabic, her voice low but urgent. "They've set your suite on fire," she said, each word measured. "Two men in maintenance uniforms. They've disabled the alarms on your floor. The sprinklers won't work. You'll be trapped." The change in his expression was instant impatience, melting into shock, then something sharper, focus. Without hesitation, Daniel slammed the emergency stop button. The elevator jolted to a halt between floors, the lights flickering once before stabilizing. He stepped closer, his gaze fixed on hers, as though trying to read the truth in her eyes. "Repeat that," he commanded in Arabic. Emily's voice steadied. "Someone ordered them to kill you. They're going to lock you in and let the fire spread." For a long moment, Daniel didn't speak. Then he pulled out his phone, dialing rapidly and issuing brisk orders in Arabic: security sweeps, evacuation protocols, a lockdown on the upper floors. Emily could already smell faint smoke filtering through the elevator's vents. "We need to get out now," she urged. He ended the call and pressed the button for the service level. "My security team is checking the penthouse. If you're right." The elevator doors opened to a dimly lit service corridor Emily had never seen before. Harsh emergency lighting painted the concrete walls in cold tones. Without letting go of her hand, Daniel led her toward an exit stairwell. Somewhere above them, the fire alarms began to wail, but only on the lower floors, just as the men had planned. "Why warn me?" he asked as they descended, their footsteps echoing. "You don't even know me." Emily's answer was simple, almost breathless. "Because it's the right thing to do." They burst into the underground garage where a sleek black Mercedes waited, the driver's eyes widening as he saw them emerge from the service stairs instead of the main elevator. "Sir, there's a fire on the 42nd floor," the driver reported. "They say it started in your suite." Daniel ushered Emily into the back seat before sliding in beside her. Through the tinted windows, she saw the first fire trucks pulling up to the hotel's entrance, guests streaming out in confusion. The penthouse windows high above glowed an ominous orange against the night sky. "You saved my life tonight," Daniel said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that made Emily's pulse quicken. "In my culture, that creates a debt that can never be repaid." "You don't owe me anything," she replied, suddenly aware of the adrenaline ebbing from her system. "I just did what anyone should do." He shook his head. "What you did was extraordinary. You risked your safety to warn a Stranger. If those men had seen you, he didn't finish the thought, but the unspoken danger hung between them. As the Mercedes sped away, Emily realized her life had just veered off its familiar, quiet path, into a world of wealth, danger, and uncertainty. The moment she'd stepped into that elevator, she'd changed both their lives forever. And neither of them had any idea just how far the ripples of that choice would reach. The night air in Dubai was still heavy with the smell of smoke when the black Mercedes glided through the gates of Daniel Rahman's private estate. The sleek metal gates closed, behind them with a quiet finality, sealing Emily Carter inside a world far removed from the bustle of the Al Marwan Tower where she had worked only hours earlier. She had expected to be dropped somewhere safe. A police station, maybe, or her small apartment in Dira where her grandmother waited with mint tea and evening stories. Instead, Daniel had made it clear, there was only one destination he would accept. "You're coming with me," he'd said in a tone that allowed no debate. "Hassan will not stop, until he finds someone to punish for tonight. I won't give him that opportunity." Emily had recognized the name instantly, Hassan Malik. A titan in Middle Eastern real estate, his empire rivaled Daniel's. Years ago, they had been partners, even close friends, until a scandal involving Hassan's younger brother tore them apart. The details were vague in the public eye, but Emily could hear the steel in Daniel's voice when he spoke of him now. The car rolled down a palm-lined driveway toward a sprawling villa that gleamed under discreet floodlights. The architecture blended modern minimalism with subtle Arabic, detailing sleek white walls, carved wooden balconies, and arched windows that glowed warmly from within. Security guards in dark suits stood at quiet intervals, their eyes sharp and alert, nodding respectfully as the car passed. When they stopped at the entrance, Daniel stepped out first and offered Emily his hand. She hesitated. Every instinct told her this was a place for guests of influence, not a hotel interpreter who had stumbled into someone else's war. But the memory of the many maintenance uniforms whispering about fire and death was still vivid in her mind. She took his hand. Inside, the villa was silent, except for the faint trickle of a fountain in the grand foyer. Polished marble floors reflected the light from a crystal chandelier, and the air was scented with jasmine drifting in from the garden. Daniel guided her through the hallways as if determined to show her she was safe here. "You'll stay in the East Wing," he explained. "It's close to my offices and under the watch of my most trusted security. No one enters this compound without my approval." Emily found herself in a bedroom larger than her entire apartment, Egyptian cotton sheets, floor to ceiling, windows overlooking manicured gardens, and a private sitting area stocked with books in multiple languages. She turned to protest, but Daniel's expression left no room for argument. "Hassan is dangerous," he said simply. "He's also predictable. Once he realizes tonight's plan failed, he'll start looking for the reason, and for anyone who got in his way." "And you think that's me?" Emily murmured. "I know it's you." His gaze softened, but his voice carried the weight of certainty. "You were the only factor he didn't account for. That makes you his next target." For a moment, the magnitude of it settled over her like a heavy cloak. She had acted on instinct in that elevator, driven by the need to save a life. She had not considered the cost to her own safety. Daniel seemed to read her thoughts. "I won't let him touch you," he said firmly. "Not while you're under my protection." As the night deepened, Emily lay awake in the vast bed, listening to the distant hum of the estate's security systems. Outside her window, the city lights glittered beyond the high walls. She thought of her grandmother, of her quiet life, of the simple routines she might never return to. She had stepped into Daniel Rahman's world for a moment, and now it seemed she might not be able to step back out. Somewhere across the city, Hassan Malik would already know his plan had failed. And in the bruised morning, Emily suspected she would begin to learn exactly what it meant to be under the protection of a man like Daniel Rahman, and to be hunted by his most dangerous enemy. Morning sunlight spilled across the terrace of Daniel Rahman's villa, casting golden reflections on the infinity pool that seemed to stretch into the desert beyond. Emily Carter sat at a glass table, overlooking the gardens, still half convinced that the events of the previous night were a vivid dream. The jasmine-scented air, the quiet hum of the fountains, the taste of freshly brewed Arabic coffee, it all felt a world away from the chaos of the Al Marwan Tower. Daniel arrived dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark trousers, his usual air of control softened by the faint smile he gave her. "I trust you slept well?" he asked, pulling out a chair for her. "As well as anyone can, after running from a fire," Emily replied, managing a wry smile. She reached for a piece of warm flatbread from the breakfast spread, but her mind was elsewhere, on her grandmother, alone in their small apartment, likely worried sick. Daniel poured coffee for them both. "Your grandmother is safe," he said before she could ask. "My security team checked on her first thing this morning. She's been told you're assisting me with an important business matter." Emily blinked. "You went to my apartment?" "My men did," he corrected gently. "They also discovered that Hassan's people were watching the building. If you had gone home last night..." He let the implication hang. Between them, her stomach tightened. "So what now?" "I can't stay here forever." "That depends on what you decide," Daniel said, leaning forward. "I need someone I can trust, someone who can navigate cultural nuances in multiple languages, someone who won't misinterpret or misrepresent my words. You proved last night that you have courage, discretion, and initiative. I want you to work with me." "Not for me." "With me." Emily stared at him, unsure she'd heard correctly. "You want me as your business partner?" "And personal interpreter," he confirmed. "Your role would be vital in negotiations, especially in regions where trust is built as much on cultural understanding as it is on contracts." The offer was tempting, more than tempting, but her mind flashed to her grandmother's medical bills, the hours she'd spent taking extra shifts to save for her surgery. "That sounds incredible," she said slowly, "but I can't just abandon my responsibilities at home. My grandmother needs care, serious care." Daniel's expression softened. "Tell me what she needs." "She has heart problems and diabetes. The medications alone are expensive, and the doctors say she'll need surgery soon." Without hesitation, Daniel took out his phone and made a note. "She'll have the best cardiac surgeon in the world by next week. All costs covered. And whether you work here for a month or for years, you'll never have to worry about her medical bills again." Emily's eyes widened. "I can't accept that. It's too much." "It's not nearly enough," he said firmly. "You saved my life, Emily. This isn't payment, it's ensuring that someone who risked everything for me doesn't have to carry burdens alone." She hesitated, torn between pride and practicality. "And if I say yes? Then we start immediately. You'll have full access to my projects, meetings, and strategies. You'll be my voice when language becomes a barrier, and I'll make sure you and your grandmother are protected." Emily glanced out at the desert horizon, her mind racing. Accepting meant stepping fully into his world, a world of high stakes, powerful enemies, and constant scrutiny. But it also meant opportunity, safety for her family, and a partnership built on trust forged in a moment of crisis. Finally, she looked back at him and said, "If we're doing this, it's as equals. My voice matters in every decision that involves me." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Agreed. Welcome to the team, Emily Carter." In that moment, she realized her life had shifted permanently. She was no longer just a hotel interpreter, she was about to become the confidant and partner of one of the most powerful of lush men in the region. And from the way Daniel's eyes held hers, she suspected the partnership would prove far more complicated than either of them could yet imagine. The late afternoon sun cast long, warm shadows across Daniel Rahman's office as Emily Carter sat opposite him, reviewing documents from a recent business meeting. For the past week, she had shadowed him through negotiations and strategy sessions, learning just how vast and complicated his empire really was. Yet beneath the controlled confidence he wore, like armor, she sensed something else. A weight, a history. It wasn't until the office door clicked shut behind his assistant that Daniel spoke, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. "You deserve to know why Hassan Malik will stop at nothing to destroy me." Emily set down the papers, sensing the conversation's gravity. "Years ago," Daniel began, "Hassan wasn't my enemy. He was my closest friend. We met at university in London, two ambitious young men with dreams bigger than our bank accounts. After graduation, we came back to Dubai and started a construction company together. We worked hard, trusted each other completely. Or so I thought." He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing as he revisited the memory. "Then Hassan's younger brother, Tarek, wanted to join the business. I had reservations. Tarek was impulsive, reckless with money, but Hassan convinced me to give him a chance. I wish I'd trusted my 12th instincts." Emily listened in silence as Daniel continued. "Over 6 months, Tariq embezzled nearly $3 million from client deposits. It nearly destroyed us. When I confronted Hassan with the evidence, he begged me not to involve the police. He said we could pay the clients back Privately, spare the family the shame. I agreed on one condition: Tariq would leave the company for good. Daniel's voice tightened. But the night before we were supposed to meet with the clients, Tariq vanished. Hours later, he was found dead, his car at the bottom of a cliff in Oman. The police ruled it an accident fueled by alcohol and drugs. But there were signs he'd been beaten, likely by the people he owed gambling debts to. Emily's stomach twisted. And Hassan blamed you. He blamed me for everything, Daniel said flatly. For discovering the theft. For insisting Tariq leave the company. For not agreeing instantly to cover all his debts, even the ones to the criminal syndicates. In his mind, I might as well have pushed his brother off that cliff. Myself. The bitterness in his tone wasn't just about betrayal, it was about grief, too. Emily could hear it in the pauses between his words. See it in the way his gaze drifted to the skyline beyond the window. What did you do after? She asked softly. I paid the clients back in full, Daniel replied. Every dollar Tariq had stolen, plus interest. It took me 3 years to recover financially. Hassan never once thanked me for protecting the Bly business's reputation. Instead, he spent those years quietly poisoning my relationships in the industry, sabotaging deals, spreading rumors. When that didn't ruin me, he escalated to the point where you found yourself in that elevator, warning me about a fire meant to kill me. Emily absorbed the story, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. This wasn't just a business rivalry, it was a vendetta born of tragedy, and twisted into something dangerous by grief and pride. He's not just trying to win, she murmured. He's trying to hurt you the way he's hurting. Daniel met her eyes, and for a moment, she saw past the polished businessman to the man who had once lost a friend and a brother in the same night. That's exactly what makes him dangerous. He doesn't care if he burns his own empire to the ground, as long as he thinks I'm in the ashes with him. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, the city lights flickering on one by one. Emily understood now that this fight wasn't simply about contracts or property. It was about survival, his, hers, and perhaps something deeper neither of them was ready to name. It was just after sunset when Emily Carter's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated before answering, the faint murmur of the villa's fountains in the background. Miss Carter, the voice said smoothly, accented but calm. I trust you know who this is. Her breath caught. Hassan Malik. I prefer Hassan, he replied lightly, as if they were old acquaintances rather than players in a deadly game. I'm calling because I think you deserve the truth about Daniel Rahman, the truth he will never tell you. Emily's pulse quickened. I'm not interested in your vendetta. Vendetta? Hassan chuckled. Call it a warning. Daniel has convinced you that I am some villain lurking in the shadows, but he's the one laundering money through his so-called development projects. That's a serious accusation, Emily said, keeping her voice neutral. And one I can prove, Hassan pressed. Look into the Damascus hotel deal. The Beirut housing development. You'll find cash transfers in untraceable amounts, offshore accounts in obscure jurisdictions. He needs someone like you, fluent in the language, trusted by locals, to smooth over questions from regulators. Whether you realize it or not, you're already a key piece of his operation. Emily tightened her grip on the phone. His tone was persuasive, deliberate, weaving just enough plausible detail to slip past her defenses. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I don't want you to be dragged down when his empire collapses, Hassan said. Daniel is clever, but he's not invincible. When the authorities close in, they'll look at everyone in his inner circle. I can make sure you're protected, if you help me. Her heart sank. Help you how? Simple, he said. Place a small device in Daniel's private office. It will capture conversations, financial discussions, evidence of his crimes. In exchange, I'll pay you $500,000. More importantly, you'll have the proof you need to know what kind of man he really is. Emily's instinct screamed that this was dangerous, not just for her safety, but for her ability to trust her own judgment. She had seen Daniel's decisiveness, his generosity, even his quiet humor in unguarded moments. But Hassan's words planted a seed of doubt, and once planted, doubt had a way of growing. Hassan, she said slowly, what you're asking could ruin someone's life. Or, he countered smoothly, it could save yours. Tell me, do you really know where Daniel was the night of the fire? Why was his luggage already packed? Why was he leaving Dubai before you warned him? Ask him, Emily. Watch his reaction. You'll see. He ended the call before she could respond, leaving her staring at the dark screen, the echo of his voice still in her ears. Later that night, Emily found Daniel in his study, surrounded by files and the glow of a laptop screen. He looked up with that warm, steady smile she had come to rely on. But now, behind her own polite expression, her thoughts were a storm. Could Hassan be lying to manipulate her? Absolutely. But what if even a fraction of what he said was true? And what if she had stepped into a world where loyalty could blind her to the truth? She said nothing then, but as she walked away, she knew the next conversation with Daniel would not be about business, it would be about trust, and whether theirs could survive the shadows Hassan had just unleashed. The following morning, the atmosphere inside Daniel Rahman's villa was taut with controlled urgency. Emily Carter sat at the long conference table in his private office, flanked by Daniel on one side, and Detective Farah Saeed from Dubai's Criminal Investigation Department on the other. Spread out before them was a compact, unremarkable-looking package, a box of specialty Lebanese tea. Hidden inside the lining was a sleek, high-grade listening device. No, bigger than a coin. This, Detective Farah explained, is what Hassan expects you to plant in Daniel's office. We'll let him believe you've done exactly that, but the device will be routed through our secure system. Everything it transmits will be under police control. Emily turned the small transmitter over in her fingers. It looked harmless, but she knew its power lay in what it could make someone reveal. And you're certain he'll talk freely once he thinks it's in place? Hassan is arrogant, Daniel said, his voice edged with the kind of certainty born from long acquaintance. He believes he's always the smartest man in the room. If he thinks you're on his side, he'll want to boast about his plans, show you how clever he is. The plan was deceptively simple. Emily would send Hassan a coded message confirming the SACE device had been planted. In reality, she would place it in Daniel's office under the watchful eyes of both his security team and the police. Then, Hassan would be fed carefully scripted snippets of conversation, fictional discussions about large cash transfers, offshore accounts, and political payoffs, designed to tempt him into revealing his own illegal dealings. Detective Farah leaned forward. Your role, Miss Carter, is to keep him talking when you meet in person. The more detail he gives, the stronger our case for conspiracy, attempt to murder, and financial crimes. Emily nodded, but the knot in her stomach tightened. And if he realizes it's a setup? Daniel answered before the detective could. Then my security team intervenes immediately. We'll have operatives positioned throughout the meeting location. You say the code phrase, "I'm not sure about this weather," and you're out of there in seconds. The phrase was so ordinary it could pass in any conversation, but Emily found comfort in its simplicity. Still, the thought of sitting across from Hassan, pretending to betray Daniel, sent a ripple of unease through her. That afternoon, she stood in Daniel's office, while Khalid, his head of security, placed the device behind a decorative panel in the bookshelf. Signal is live, he confirmed, checking the feed on a tablet. Police control room has a clean connection. Emily sent the text. It's done. The reply came within minutes. Excellent. We meet tomorrow to discuss your compensation. The location he chose was a crowded cafe in Old Dubai, not far from her grandmother's neighborhood, a place Hassan likely hoped would put her at ease. The next evening, dressed in understated dark clothing, Emily entered the cafe with her heart pounding. Daniel's security team blended into the patrons and staff, while Detective Farah monitored from a nearby table. Hassan arrived exactly on time, all casual charm in a tailored jacket and an unthreatening smile. He spoke easily at first, praising her courage for helping him, then moved to the bait Daniel had prepared. You won't believe what I've already heard from your little gift, he said. Leaning in. Cash movements, shell companies. Daniel's more corrupt than even I imagined. Emily kept her voice steady. And what exactly do you plan to do with that information? That was all the prompting he needed. For the next 20 minutes, Hassan outlined his entire strategy to dismantle Daniel's business, naming accomplices, detailing past attacks, even boasting about the hotel fire. Every word was transmitted directly to the police. When she finally rose to leave, Emily caught Daniel's eye from across the cafe. He didn't move, didn't speak, but in that silent exchange, she knew they were both thinking the same thing. The trap had been set, and Hassan had walked straight into it. 3 days after the tense meeting in the Old Dubai cafe, the news broke like a thunderclap. Emily Carter was seated on the sun-drenched terrace of Daniel Rahman's villa, reviewing negotiation notes for an upcoming resort project, when Khaled, Daniel's head of security, approached with a rare, almost triumphant smile. "It's over," he said simply, placing a tablet in front of her. The headline blazed across the screen. Real estate magnate Hassan Malik arrested in Switzerland on international warrant. Beneath it, a photograph showed Hassan, in a Prixio Libre, tailored overcoat and dark sunglasses, being escorted by Swiss police through the lobby of a Prosecom luxury hotel in Geneva. The arrest had taken place at dawn, just hours before he was scheduled to board a private jet to Monaco. Daniel emerged from his office moments later, his phone pressed to his ear. Emily watched. The tension in his shoulders eased with each word he spoke. When he finally ended the call, there was a calm satisfaction in his voice. Swiss authorities have him in custody. The Dubai courts have already filed for extradition. With the evidence from your meeting, he doesn't stand a chance. Detective Farah Saeed arrived later that afternoon to brief them in person. She laid out the sequence of events. The recording from the CAF. Had been enough to secure an immediate arrest warrant, but Swiss police had also found additional evidence in Hassan's hotel suite: financial records, forged documents, and detailed plans for further attacks on Daniel's business and personal life. Frankly, Farah admitted, this case went from strong to airtight in a matter of hours. Emily listened in a mix of relief and disbelief. For weeks, Hassan had been a shadow at the edge of her life, dangerous, unpredictable, always one move ahead. And now, with a series of swift, coordinated actions, he was behind bars in a foreign country. "How long before he's here?" Daniel asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3, Farah replied. "His lawyers will fight the extradition, but the charges are serious enough, and the political pressure strong enough, that the Swiss courts are expected to cooperate fully." The conversation shifted to logistics. Heightened security at the villa until Hassan was in Dubai's custody, coordination with international law enforcement, and preparation for the BSS inevitable media storm. Daniel handled it all with his usual composed efficiency, but Emily could see the flicker of something else in his eyes' closure. That evening, as the desert sunset painted the sky in streaks of gold and crimson, Daniel and Emily walked through the garden maze. For the first time in days, there was no talk of contingency plans or surveillance reports. "It's strange," Emily said quietly. "I thought I'd feel pure relief. But part of me keeps waiting for the next move." "That's normal," Daniel replied. "When someone's been a threat for this long, it's hard to believe they're truly gone. But this time, it's real. Hassan will be facing the rest of his life under watch, if not behind bars." Emily stopped near the central fountain, listening to the water's steady rhythm. "When we met in that elevator, I didn't think saving your life would change mine so completely." Daniel looked at her, the desert light catching in his eyes. "It changed mine too, Emily, in more ways than you'll ever know." They stood there for a long moment, letting the reality sink in. Hassan Malik's reign of intimidation was over. The constant vigilance, the second-guessing, the quiet fear, it was all beginning to lift. Somewhere far away, in a cold Swiss cell, the man who had once been Daniel's closest friend was counting the hours until he faced justice in Dubai. And here, in the quiet heart of the villa, Emily allowed herself the rarest luxury she'd known since that night in the lobby. Hope. The weeks following Hassan Malik's arrest felt like the first breaths after a long dive. The air around Daniel Rahman's villa was lighter, the constant hum of tension replaced by the quiet rhythm of everyday life. Emily Carter found herself settling into a new normal, working alongside Daniel on international projects, visiting her grandmother without armed escorts, and enjoying evenings unshadowed by fear. One crisp morning, they walked together through the villa's gardens. The desert breeze carrying the scent of jasmine. Daniel paused near the central fountain, his hands in his pockets, his expression unusually contemplative. "Emily," he began, his voice softer than she was used to hearing, "you've been my partner through danger and uncertainty. You've saved my life, my business, and, in more ways than I can explain, my faith in people. I don't want us to simply survive the worst together. I want us to build the best together." Before she could reply, he reached into his jacket and drew out a small velvet box. Dropping to one knee, he opened it to reveal a diamond ring, elegant and understated, just like her. "Emily Carter," he said, meeting her eyes with unwavering sincerity, "will you marry me?" Tears welled before she could stop them. "Yes," she whispered, then with more certainty. "Yes, of course." Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, and the weight of it felt less like jewelry, and more like a promise sealed. Their wedding, planned over the next 6 weeks, became a celebration of two worlds uniting. Held at sunset, in the villa's desert gardens, the ceremony blended the elegance of Emirati tradition with the warmth of Emily's Lebanese heritage. Arabic calligraphy adorned silk banners, oud music mingled with the soft notes of a violin, and the air was rich with the aroma of saffron, rosewater, and fresh-baked bread. Emily's grandmother, resplendent in a gown chosen for the occasion, walked her down the aisle. "Your parents would be proud," she whispered as they approached Daniel, who stood, waiting in traditional white robes. The vows were spoken in both Arabic and English. Daniel, promising to honor her courage and kindness. Emily pledging to be his home in every season of life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they sealed their union with a kiss beneath a canopy of lanterns. The reception stretched into the night, filled with dabki dancing, Emirati hospitality, and the laughter of family and friends who had witnessed their journey from strangers in an elevator to partners in life. When the last of the guests departed and the music faded, Daniel and Emily lingered under the stars. "You saved my life," he murmured, holding her close. She smiled, resting her head against his chest. "We saved each other." In that quiet moment, surrounded by the desert's stillness, they both knew that the danger they had faced had forged something unshakable, love that would not just survive, but thrive. 1 year after their wedding beneath the desert sky, Daniel Rahman and Emily Carter stood on the balcony of their new penthouse, the Dubai skyline shimmering below them. Their days were now a seamless blend of thriving business ventures and the quiet joy of married life. Together, they had launched sustainable development projects in Morocco, Jordan, and Lebanon, each one carrying both profit and purpose. Evenings were spent dreaming about the family they hoped to build, children who would grow up knowing the value of courage, loyalty, and love. Looking back, Emily often thought about how everything began with one impulsive decision. In a hotel lobby, a moment when she chose action over safety, compassion over indifference. That choice had brought her not only professional success, but a life rich in meaning and partnership. Daniel, for his part, knew that every deal closed, every milestone reached, was sweeter because it was shared with the woman who had saved his life and captured his heart. Sometimes the most life-changing opportunities don't come wrapped in safety or certainty. They arrive disguised as risk, asking you to trust your instincts and step forward when it would be easier to stand still. Courage can open doors you never imagined, and love can build bridges over any storm. If Emily and Daniel's journey touched your heart, tell me, which moment of their story inspired you most? Was it the first act of bravery, the triumph over danger, or the vision they built together? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories that remind us all of the strength we carry inside.